Actually, it's 3 now.
It's officially 3, yeah. So go ahead.
All
Kick
right.
it off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the info session of the Applied AG Private University Ranking ASEAN. It's good to see so many old friends and new ones as well, albeit virtually, and I hope to see all of you in person very soon in the near future. For those whom I've not met, my name is Mandy Mock and I'm the founder and CEO of Applied AG. Applied AG is a new higher education evaluation and branding agency, which I founded in 2020 after an almost 20-year career at QS. I left QS with the aim of creating an alternative solution in ranking, rating, and branding that better serves the need of more learning and employability-focused applied universities, which I believe are dominant in the ASEAN region, in fact, all over the world. Which is the reason why we're now bringing the global limelight to shine on the private universities in the ASEAN region. The Applied AG Private University Ranking ASEAN has two main goals. On the one hand, we want to highlight the strengths and achievements of private universities in the ASEAN region. And on the other hand, the ranking aims to provide students, parents, employers, and other stakeholders with a reliable and relevant benchmark against which universities can be compared. This is the first ranking of ASEAN universities carried out by an organization from Southeast Asia. This home advantage makes us more alert and more responsive of the local higher education landscape. Higher education in Southeast Asia is mainly aimed at training, developing the human resources needed for fast-changing economies. And although there are a number of research-intensive universities in Southeast Asia that have climbed the global rankings, average research expenditure in Southeast Asia is still relatively low. As a result, the quality of teaching and learning and employability are most relevant to the majority of universities in this region. While research also plays an important role, with the exception of a few public universities, most universities in Southeast Asia have very modest research footprints. And so for that reason, it does not make sense to put research center stage in an ASEAN-focused ranking. We also hope that an ASEAN ranking will bring Southeast Asia closer together. During the past decades, we have seen that private sector initiatives have brought this region closer together, with governments often following their lead. We have seen the emergence of pan-ASEAN brands such as Grab, Shopee, or AirAsia, which have transformed lives and created a sense of a united ASEAN. So we hope that by having an ASEAN-centered university ranking, we can achieve a kind of ASEAN consciousness in the higher education space. Another important distinction is our focus on private universities. Private higher education providers in Southeast Asia are often more nimble, more outward-looking, and more innovative than their public sector counterparts. They've also completely different funding models and missions, making a comparison of public and private universities in the same ranking awkward, if not unfair. So what is our expectation of the outcomes of this ranking? At a policy level, we hope our rankings will spark discussions about how the private higher education sector of the different ASEAN countries can develop further. But more importantly, at an individual level, we believe that our rankings can change the perception of students and parents. If you look at most university rankings today, they are dominated by North American, European, and some highly developed Asian economies. It's therefore no wonder that ambitious young students aim for those universities, resulting in a brain drain in their own country. But an ASEAN ranking can highlight excellence here in our region. Why shouldn't a Vietnamese student choose a leading Philippine or Malaysian university to gain experience in an English-speaking country? Why shouldn't an Indonesian student consider a degree in Thailand or Cambodia and discover new cultures and languages along the way? Stimulating this kind of student mobility changes lives, and if our rankings can contribute to that, it's already a great contribution. But even locally, these rankings are valuable, especially for private universities, which typically have limited research budgets and therefore don't feature in any international rankings. The Applied AG Private University Ranking ASEAN makes your institution much more visible. For institutions that are already ranked elsewhere, taking part in the Applied AG Private University ranking simply adds another feather in your cap. If you perform well, it's another cycle of media attention, new talking points, and new superlatives. The Applied AG Private University ranking ASEAN, therefore, represents a huge opportunity for the sector, and it's one that we hope you will all seize. Let's all unite and bring Southeast Asia closer together. It is now my pleasure to hand the stage over to our head analyst, Mr. Peter Stack, for a complete briefing and methodology of the Applied AG Private University ranking ASEAN. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mandy. Let me see if I can get my screen sharing right this time. Seems to be working. All right, fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Well, it's afternoon here in Kuala Lumpur, a very rainy afternoon. Yeah, so the aim of this session is to basically tell you everything that you need to know if your institution is considering to participate in the private university ranking ASEAN, and also for us to hear your questions. So if you're able to leave questions in our Q&A box or the chat box, or you can press the raise hand button, then by the end of my presentation, we'll hopefully get to the Q&A. It's very important for us to hear your feedback, find out what's not clear, if there's anything at this point in time that's holding you back. Now, before we start, I just want to highlight the target group of universities for this ranking are private universities in the 10 Southeast Asian countries. So that's Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, etc. So I've noticed in the audience, we have an audience member from India. I think we also have an audience member from a public university in Malaysia. You're very, very welcome to join this session, but please understand that your institution will not be included in this ranking exercise at this point in time. Of course, we are looking towards the future, including more universities, including public, including beyond the ASEAN region. But I just want to clarify that right as we start. Now, I'll give you an introduction about kind of the thinking that we have at Applied HE about rankings. Then I'll talk to you basically about the very technical stuff, the criteria, the data, the timeline that we're doing the ranking exercise in, the promotional strategies that we're using and where this ranking fits within a promotional strategy, how our rankings also connect to ratings. We also have a rating product which is called the Job Ready rating, which any institution can do right now, but it's a paid product, and they're closely related. And then some closing comments before we hopefully go into very lively and informative Q&A. Now, the question we ask ourselves at Applied HE is basically, when you develop a ranking and a rating, you're asking yourself, well, what makes a university good? What are the criteria that you should be measuring? What are the values that you look at? So in a sense, a ranking is always a bit subjective in the things that you choose to include and the things you choose to exclude. Now, what is important to you may vary. We often put the students center stage because they're the ones who are going to university, but students are also complex. They have many diverse thoughts. Yes, they think about getting a job or making a job for themselves. They might be more internationally focused, but it's a changing world. So lifelong learning, sustainability, community, etc. Those things are coming up as well. So with our various rankings and ratings, we're trying to serve a broad spectrum, but we can, of course, not serve everything and everyone. So essentially, if you're a university and you're thinking of doing a rating or a ranking, you have to ask yourself, now, which evaluation tools fits best with our values? So very important to emphasize, our ranking is voluntary. We need your help, your cooperation to do it, because we run a student survey, and I'll get into that in a moment. But if you don't want to be ranked, we will not rank you. So it's 100% voluntary exercise. And my job today is to convince you that it's an absolutely worthwhile exercise for you to undertake with us. Now, we have a bit of experience in producing rankings as applied HE. Mandy already mentioned QS, her experience there. I'm also an ex-QS staff member. And we also produced the Rankometer World University Rankings, which was a kind of remixed rankings of different rankings combined. It was kind of a little pilot project that we launched in January this year. And now we're really going into the real stuff, the private university ranking ASEAN, which is a completely original data collection and everything, much larger project, which we're doing now. And throughout this, we're being guided by our ranking advisory board. And as I mentioned before this presentation, I forgot to include a slide. We've got, I believe at this moment, 30 members from around the world who have a lot of experience and who volunteer their time to give comments on the kind of work that we at the Applied HE team do. They are independent. We have no control over them. We usually listen to their opinions, but sometimes we don't. So that's the kind of relationship that we have with them. And I think it's a very productive one. It's a very healthy one. But yeah, thanks to all those members of the Ranking Advisory Board. Now let me talk about the criteria, the data, and the timeline. So starting with the criteria, we look at 6 different things. We look first and foremost at teaching and learning. We look at employability. We look at research, of course. We look at community outreach, internationalization, and then we have a broad measure of institutional reputation. So those are the 6 criteria that are part of our ranking system. Now, if you break it down in terms of the numbers, 40% is teaching and learning, by far the largest part. And the thinking for this comes from the fact that the reason a student goes to a private university, why they pay fees, when not benefiting from often government funding, is that they expect a very high quality education, so hence 40%. And second, they expect to get a job, hence the 15%. So our emphasis is very strongly on teaching and learning and employability, especially as Mandy mentioned in an ASEAN context. Those are the main things that private universities are supposed to do. Now, research, of course, also has an important role to play. So we measure that at 15%. And then we also look at the community, whether the institution is serving the community, internationalization and institutional reputation. And I'll get into the data that we use for that in a moment. Now, the ranking data we use, as you already noticed, the quality of teaching and learning we get primarily from a series of an online student survey that we conduct on your students. Now, online student surveys are quite common in many parts of the world. In the United Kingdom, in the Netherlands, you've got a national student survey, which is done every year by virtually all universities there. And it's a very important tool. In the UK, it even influences funding for universities and what kind of fees that universities can ask. So as well, it might be quite novel and new here in the ASEAN region to have a kind of national, or in this case, international student survey. It's a common tool that's used in higher education evaluation. And so we've taken pages from the experience in other countries in developing student survey for us. And I'll talk about the survey a little bit more later. Then in terms of the bibliometrics, the data that we use to measure research, we look at Google Scholar. Now, Google Scholar is by far the largest database of scholarly output in the world. It's 3 or 4 times larger than something like Scopus. And that means that, in a way, it captures much more research. And we see especially that many ASEAN private universities are quite poorly represented in a database like Scopus, but they're very well represented in Google Scholar, also because Google Scholar captures research output in multiple different languages. It does that very well. So it's a better tool, especially, I think, if you're looking at these ASEAN universities. And then third, we require universities to submit institutional data. Right. So again, we rely on your cooperation. We ask for some institutional data. How many students do you have? what's the percentage international students, faculty, etc. And we actually verify that through an audit. So we will follow up on a randomly selected number of institutions, and we will ask you to kind of prove the data that you've submitted to us. So we reserve that right in our terms and conditions. And we would be the first ranking agency to actually do that with institutional submitted data. So we really try to be very thorough, try to build that credibility right from the beginning. Now, also with student surveys, we know that there is sometimes gaming going on of student surveys. We were aware of that. We've seen that in the past in surveys we've run. So we have a procedure to screen that. So what we try to find out is that the respondent to the survey is really who they are. And the way we do that complies with the privacy protection or GDPR type directives. And so in that sense, it shouldn't be a problem. We never ask for student data from you as an institution. Now, going to the data sources, so the student survey actually accounts for about half of our indicators. And we also have the institutional data for about a third, and then bibliometrics for about 13%, and reputation for about 10%. So we also look at Google News, and you'll find that if you look at our detailed methodology. And I'll share with you the link again later on where you can really read through all of this again. So no need to take notes. It's all in our brochure. It's all in our methodology note. Now, what does the ranking timeline look like? Right now, we're in the promotional phase and institutional data submission phase. So in the month of September and October, we're doing outreach, like these kinds of events. And we give you time to submit your data. Now, the deadline we set is October 15th, and then a really deadline of October 31st. We'd appreciate if you submit a little bit earlier. That would make our life easier. But we also understand that there can be different pressures that you have. But yeah, please submit data in October or before then. Then after we've received your data and we know exactly which universities are participating in our ranking, we will have a period for online surveys. So your institution will receive a unique survey link. Your students can go there, enter their email address, and then they can start taking our survey. And we plan to give you the month of November to complete that. We don't really want to extend it much longer. So November is really the time that has to happen. And we target for a response rate of about 10%. So I highly encourage you to tell your students this is a great way for our university to profile itself. If you're a happy student studying here, you always wanted to tell the world how it is, please complete our online survey. It takes 5 minutes. You can do it on your phone. It's not a huge, difficult thing to do. Then in December, we will be doing our ranking compilation and audit. We're hoping to do it in a month. It depends a little bit how many of you are participating in this ranking. If there's overwhelming demand, it might take longer. That would be a happy problem. But we hope to round it off towards the end of the year so that in January 2022, we can have the ranking publication. Now, this is our timeline. I think we will prioritize quality. So if it were to take us a few weeks longer to get it right, I predict we will go in that direction. But yeah, early 2022, so in a couple of months' time already, you can expect us to be publishing results. Now, this is the detailed timeline. The dates I want to point out is 15 October. Please register by then, and this is our registration site, appliedhe.org/rankingreg, and actually you can find all the information you can imagine there as well. You can, we have an extended registration deadline because we know how things work. The start of the survey period is November 1st. It ends the 30th of November. And then the 15th of December would really be the end of our grace period. And there, as you can see, we would have to wrap it up in January, February launch. Now, how does this ranking fit within your promotional strategy? Because let's face it, it's nice that you submit data, it's nice that you ran the student survey, but what is the bigger picture? What is the value added of our ranking? Oops. So So first of all, we produce a ranking microsite on appliedhe.com, which is our website, which also links to Future, our social media platform. So that's one way. It's a very good, quick description of the ranking, the methodology, all the institutions, etc. And there's also advertising opportunities there. We'll have a rankings launch event, probably still in webinar form, but as soon as it's possible to do it physically, we would try and do something physically somewhere in the region. There'll be an Applied HE ranking showcase book, which again describes the details. There'll be a limited print number, and we'll be sending that around to decision makers in the region to really present your university, your ranking score, and the sector and the region as a whole to interested parties. We'll be working on media exposure and media partnerships. So already with our rankometer, we just did press releases, and we were covered by about 10-15 publications around the world. So we will, for this round, we will be focusing on ASEAN and the press in the countries here, which is also probably what interests you as universities, to see if we can get good media exposure, possibly even media partnerships with a kind of early release to the media organization exclusivity or something like that. But we're working towards that. And actually, if you have suggestions there, we'd be very happy, especially for your own country, if you see an opportunity there. Okay, I shouldn't click twice. Now, we also give you a range of promotional materials. This is for ratings, but the same applies for rankings. You can get a kind of ranking badge, you get a ranking certificate from us, you get a report with some additional information about your ranking results, which we don't publish. Of course, you get listed on appliedhe.com. We have our own news service, which is indexed by Google News, where you get published as well. So there's all that free stuff that you get by participating. Then, why isn't it loading? Yeah, this is something I want to emphasize as well, especially at this stage. We number one, we want to be transparent. Number two, we want to give you as much value out of the ranking exercise as we can. So the saying is often data is the new gold, right? So we will give you detailed performance specified for each indicator. You can benchmark yourself against peer groups. I mean, that's other ASEAN universities. We'll give you some insight into the stakeholder perception based on the students that are responding in our surveys. And we are also looking into giving you anonymized raw data for internal analysis, so that we know that there's often survey fatigue. So you can use our raw data. It is anonymized though, to analyze areas where there might be strength, weakness, whatnot. So we're willing to release that. We're still looking at the precise details for that. But yeah, we really want to add as much value to you as we can by doing this ranking exercise. We don't just want to give you a grade and that's it. Yeah, we want to be very open, very transparent. So we use Google Scholar, for instance, and we will also share the Google Scholar data with you so that you can do your own analysis if you'd like. Now, the question is, how does the Applied HE ranking fit with Applied HE's ratings? If you're doing the ranking, should you not do the rating, or should you do both? I just want to briefly speak about that, because there's some confusion and you might be interested to know. The ranking is essentially about global standing. So how do you compare to other private universities in the ASEAN region? And often, depending on your environment, your circumstances, you might score very high there, or you might score maybe a little bit lower than you were expecting there. So a ranking is interesting, but of course has its limitations. Now, our rating, which is also based on surveys and opinions for a large part, is based on the perspective of local stakeholders. So it is possible that you rank maybe not in the top tier of one of our rankings, but you rate very highly because you fulfill an incredibly valuable role for local employers, to your own students, to your own alumni. So that's possible. And of course, the ranking is quite narrow. The rating is much broader. So if you participate in the rating, it's a much broader measure of your performance. Now, these are some of the ranking criteria, as I mentioned before. Teaching and learning, employability, research, community engagement, etc. And the job ready rating has some kind of equivalencies and builds on that. So in addition to teaching and learning, we also look at the faculty profile, also at industry exposure. In addition to employability, we also look at graduate competence, remuneration, entrepreneurship. In addition to research, we also look at applied research. We also look at inclusiveness and access. We look at intercultural competence and at stakeholder perceptions. So it's a much broader measure that we have in our rating. The job ready rating itself, it's relevant because it focuses on career, learning, community, and industry collaboration. It's very versatile because it applies to vocational diplomas all the way up to postgraduate degrees. It's the same rating framework that we use. And it's interdisciplinary. We evaluate programs from 22 different employment clusters. Whereas for the ranking, we just evaluate your institution as a whole. Now, these are the rating criteria in detail. And as you can see on the right, they overlap with the Sustainable Development Goals. They also overlap with some of the Industrial Revolution, IR 4.0 conventions. And they also overlap with the European Framework for Quality Management. So it's a very comprehensive rating product. But today I'm talking about the ranking, so I will go into that another time. But just to show you that this is a much, much broader measurement than our ranking. And here are the 22 employment clusters that we currently have. And again, the job ready rating, many more surveys, faculty and alumni and employer survey, and also institutional data, in addition to the student survey. Now, it's worthwhile mentioning that if you join our student survey, our rating, you can automatically enroll in the ranking. So the student survey we use for the rating is compatible with the student survey for the ranking. So that is a nice feature that we have. Now, it's possible for you to view the student surveys right now, also for the job ready rating, but also for the student survey that we use for our ranking. So if you go to this QR code or appliedag.org/student demo, you can have a look at the kind of questions that we ask. Now, keep in mind that this is a development version. It's not the final version. The final version will be presented in a week or so. But if you just want to have an idea how long is the survey, what is the user experience for students, I encourage you to try it out, especially on mobile. It looks very good on mobile, and that's how your students will be doing it. So that's just for your information if you're interested. Now we're getting to the closing. So as my talk goes, and as I mentioned, this is a voluntary ranking, so rating. So we need your buy-in as users, as stakeholders. We believe that our criteria are very relevant, and especially the weightings are more relevant for ASEAN private institutions, because really teaching and learning employability is what it is all about, and that's what we emphasize. We think it's a fantastic opportunity for peer benchmarking, because we realized as we were looking into that, it was even difficult to get a list of how many ASEAN private universities really exist in each country. Are they really private? Yes or no? What is an ASEAN private university versus maybe an offshore branch campus? So it sparked a whole interesting discussion with our advisory board. And it's a unique project. This has never been done before. Although it sounds a little bit crude, it said if you are ranked, you exist. Now, private universities in ASEAN, they don't always feature in all the global rankings. And we give an opportunity for you to be in an international ranking, perhaps for the first time, and from us you can build higher. And of course, if you're in a ranking already, it's an additional superlative that you can use in your marketing and so on. And finally, there's no charge, right? So we run surveys on your students. We give you that information back. We give you all the free PR that comes with launching the rankings. So we think it's a wonderful opportunity there. So yes, we highly encourage you to join our ranking. At the same time, we also want your support. And now, one thing that we are looking for is survey translation. And I've already been in touch with one or two of you about this, but we currently plan to offer our student survey in English, Indonesian, Thai, and Vietnamese, because those are the core languages in the countries in which private universities in ASEAN are located. However, we can see that other languages such as Khmer, Bahasa Malaysia, maybe Tagalog, maybe even Chinese might better serve your student body. Now, if you would be willing to help us to translate a short survey in those languages, that can be done. So if you can reach out to us saying, yes, we'd like to participate and we'd like to have the survey translated into a target language. It could be additional languages to this. I have nothing against that. Please let us know, and we can set you up to do the kind of community source translation for that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is outreach. Now, please forward this information to your colleagues. We've spent a lot of time trying to get an idea of where the ASEAN universities are, what their email addresses are. We have a wonderful member of staff who spent hours and hours poring over your websites, getting in touch via WhatsApp and whatnot, making phone calls. But I'm sure we haven't reached everybody. Also, thanks to Pagukoa, Mapku, who've promised to send out to their members, Apai, Thailand, but maybe we haven't reached everybody. So please, if you're doing small talk with your colleagues, slip it in, mention it, because it would be so wonderful to have many universities join, especially in this first edition. Also, local media outreach, if you have ideas there, I mean, this is win-win, right? Your university will be ranked by us. That is something you can feed to the local media, and maybe with a partnership, we can amplify that, both for your institution and for Applied HE. So if you have an idea or a contact there, or you happen to own a newspaper or be best friends with an education journalist, please reach out to us as well. And finally, your own questions and suggestions. If you think something is not right, or you think we haven't considered something, right now we're very open to suggestions. We're probably not going to handle hundreds and hundreds of universities. We're really keen to develop this. So this is the time to reach out with comments. I cannot guarantee you that we'll always follow up your suggestion, but you'll definitely get an answer from us. So we want to engage in that way. And finally, sponsorship and our job ready rating. Yeah, we're not supported by the government in any way. We're a private project. And I think, yeah, our sponsorship offers and our rating offers are very competitive. So if you're considering to spend, anyway, you have some budget lying around, if you could put up, a good word for us at the budget office, we would be most grateful, because it helps us cover the cost for this fantastic project. Now, there's basically, these are the two addresses to remember. appliedhe.org/ranking-reg is where you register for the ranking, where you can find our brochure, our detailed methodology, basically everything you could possibly need. So remember that. And then also the ranking@appliedhe.org email address is where you can reach us with all questions about rankings, and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. So I will leave it here, and then I will quickly check the chat if there are any questions. Okay, I think we're transitioning away from the thing. Yeah. So let me go through the chat. Okay. Oh, somebody wants an e-certificate for this webinar. I guess that's possible. I will write the email address in the chat, and you can contact our member of staff for an e-certificate. Yes, we hope you learned something, and we're happy to issue the certificate. Okay, greetings from Phnom Penh. Okay, greetings back. Well, we're very excited that you're participating. Yes, please come back with questions as you start filling it in. Note, we also have a phone number listed on the website, so you can even try to call that. We'll try and manage during office hours. Okay, great that you're willing to reach out and help with the Khmer translation. That would be fantastic. All right, those are the only comments I see right now. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question at this point? Or you can also raise hand if you just want to speak or make a comment or anything like that. Maybe you'll get more questions and comments as you start filling in the forms and submitting the information, I'm sure. That's also completely fine. And yes, feel free to email us after this with questions, and we'll try and reach out. Okay. Mandy, yeah, do you want to,
Yes,
your closing remarks?
No more questions, yeah. Right, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. I hope you're now clear on the methodology and the goals of the Applied HE Private University Ranking ASEAN. This is a great opportunity for private universities to shine, not only on the global stage, but also locally, as we aim to provide students, parents, employers, and other stakeholders with a reliable ranking that fits the private universities in the ASEAN region. And to enhance that further, please do consider the very competitive and very comprehensive global branding sponsorship we have in the ranking brochure that was sent out to you recently, or you can request for it if you have misplaced it. Meanwhile, please respond to Peter's email, and we aim to launch the Applied HE Private University Ranking ASEAN in early 2022. We will be having another info session, the same as today's. So please do let your peers and colleagues who have missed today's session know about it, and also for those who would like to listen to it again. It is scheduled on the 7th of October on a Thursday at 5 p.m. Singapore time. On another note, just to remind you, please join us for our monthly web dinners. The next one, Fireside Chats, on the 6th of October. That's on a Wednesday, and it's at 8 p.m. Singapore time. And the theme is, what does the post-pandemic new normal look like in higher education? That's all for now. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. I'm very sorry, I see messages coming in, so I'm going to, okay, yeah. There was one question about when you should fill in the document, submit your data. Do it by October. So 15 October is the deadline. Just note that down. You don't have to do it right away. Okay, sorry to interrupt your
No, Peter, there's one more question from Indonesia. Something about the rank results, how long the
so the results will be, that's from Christianti, right? So you need to register with us before 15 October. The results will be out January or February 2022. That's clear. Okay, wonderful. Somebody said about a translation in Tagalog. Yes, please write to me. I'll put the ranking at appliedhe.org. Please write to us after this, and we will follow up with you. Yes, so we have Khmer and Tagalog coming up. I'm very happy to add those languages. Okay, thank you very much again, and see you again soon.